Welcome back to the channel, Racer X here, and today I'm back with my good buddies in Irving at Clay Cooley Dodge Jeep Chrysler Ram, because I want to talk a little bit about a subject many of you have asked me about, and it has to do with the Scat Pack. And a lot of people wonder, hey, look, should the Scat Pack really be considered an RT? A lot of things have changed over the past several years, and a lot of the folks that own Scat Packs say, look, maybe this thing really shouldn't be considered an RT at this point. Obviously, we know it's not a Hellcat, but I mean, the RT, I think when a lot of people think about what an RT is, they think of a completely different engine setup. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about my thoughts whether a Scat Pack should still be considered an RT, so it should be a good one. If you're new to my channel, do me a big gigantic favor, hit subscribe for me. I would really appreciate it. I have so much great content to bring you this year. Also follow me on Instagram, and we are off.
T-minus 15 seconds.
So a little while back, I did a video actually comparing the differences between the SRT Challenger and the Challenger Scat Pack. I just showed you some of the differences because there actually were some. And then of course we saw those lines get blurred quite a bit in about 2018 when they just quit making the Challenger SRT and went only to the Scat Pack. If you wanted an SRT, it had to be a Hellcat. Well, a little bit of kind of the same feel here. Obviously behind me, I've got a couple of cars I want to show you. That right there in cinnamon stick, beautiful color, by the way. That is a Challenger RT. That is complete with the 5.7 liter Hemi. And then, of course, right here, you do have the Challenger Scat Pack. That has the larger 6.4 liter naturally aspirated Hemi in it. Both of these cars are absolutely fantastic. But let's take a little bit closer look at these two cars, and we'll talk about whether the Scat Pack really should be an RT. So yes, we do have a couple of Challengers here, and while there are some similarities between the RT and the Scat Pack, there are actually quite a few differences as well. But the most glaring thing, first of all, is it says RT in the front of these both right here. So you can see right there it says RT. You got a little bigger badge here on the Scat Pack, but you do have an RT badge there as well. Now this particular one, the RT, this is what I think of when I think of an RT Challenger. That is the naturally aspirated smaller Hemi that they offer that puts out 375 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. So quite a good amount of torque that comes out of that engine, but it does pale in comparison to what comes, of course, in this bad daddy in the Scat Pack. 6.4 liter, that's a big engine. 6.4 liter naturally aspirated Hemi putting out 485 horsepower and 475 pound-feet of torque from the factory. And you do feel it when you drive these two. I mean, this is a much torquier engine. That's one of the things I love about the Scat Pack, is that low-end torque and punch. And while you do feel it in the 5.7, it's just on a different level in the Scat Pack. So I do want to talk about some of the key differences between these two cars. So I did mention this in a previous video, but back in 2015, we had the Charger and the Challenger SRT, which those things were essentially Hellcats with a naturally aspirated 6.4 liter engine. And then they had, of course, the Scat Pack. And really what the Scat Pack was an RT with just a bigger engine in it, with a 6.4 liter naturally aspirated Hemi that you got in the SRT. But everything else basically was trimmed out just like you would have on an RT. And then in 2018, Dodge, FCA, all those guys, they decided, you know what? We don't want to just produce the SRT anymore. We want the SRT to be special and be the Hellcat and all that kind of stuff. We just want there to be a Scat Pack. Well, they still call it an RT Scat Pack, but they basically let you trim it out just like an SRT. So I want to kind of show you some of the differences now. So 2018 was really the year everything started to get blurred, and a Scat Pack really was just an RT with a bigger engine, but then all of a sudden now you could trim it out like an SRT and put all these different options in it. There's a million different ways to configure a Scat Pack, and that's really why all the confusion came in. So one of the first things I do notice in terms of differences, obviously, is the grille is different. You can kind of see those two outlines in there. When you jump over here to the Scat Pack, it does have a different grille on it. The badge is bigger. You do have the heat extractors here in the Scat Pack hood, whereas over here in the RT, you do not. So they do have a different hood on them. And one of the reasons I picked this particular car is because this is a wide body, which I'm a huge fan of. You can get a wide body in both a Charger and a Challenger, but you can only get that that in the Hellcats and in the Scat Packs, you cannot get a wide body on the Hemis right now, on the 5.7 liter RT. So you definitely need to take that into consideration. And also with that, you're going to get the wider wheels on this car. You're going to get the dynamic suspension on this, and you're also going to get those big old awesome brakes, just like you would get on a Hellcat. And of course, none of that is even an option on the RT. So that is a big point of emphasis here. And the badges on these two cars, they are in fact different. So there's your Scat Pack badge, and there is your 5.7 Hemi badge. So a couple other key items of note, you can actually spec out a Scat Pack just like the one I'm sitting in and have this thing be, geez, almost like, you know, $60,000 if you go crazy with it, you know, wide body and put all the crazy interior in and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you can spec these out to be pretty expensive cars, but you can also spec these out base, you know, it's like $40,000 on one of these. The base on an RT is right about $35,000. So there's really only about a $5,000 difference. And so what, you know, when you talk about base to base, you know, what are really the big differences? They were talking about non-wide body cars, you know, without the dynamic suspension, all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously you're going to get some different gauges. As I mentioned, you're going to get a little bit different hood. You're going to get a different grille. And really the biggest thing is you're going to get the big 6.4 liter engine for, you know, that $5,000 versus the 5.7 liter engine offered in the RT. So really those are kind of the big things. But, you know, you just get a lot more if you want to go to the next level in terms of speccing. So really that's the biggest argument there is, like, you know, I do get that, you know, if you spec it out the most basic way, it's really not that much different than an RT. Whereas if you just go crazy with it, this thing is basically, like I mentioned, just like a Hellcat with a 6.4 liter engine in it. And of course they've got a million trims in the Scat Pack. That's the great thing. They got the Daytona and the 1320, and you've got the TA, and I mean the list goes on and on. But at the end of the day, you know, there's just so many ways to configure these things, and a lot of the Scat Pack guys are kind of up in arms and saying, look, you know, why are these things called RTs when it clearly says powered by SRT up there? I mean, should this thing even be called an RT? Why does it have an RT badge on the front of it? Now, you can also spec out an RT to be pretty decked out as well. Matter of fact, you can get an RT, if you tried hard enough, over 50 grand from a sticker price perspective. But we're talking about like an RT Plus, completely decked out from a seat perspective, basically all the bells and whistles. And as I mentioned, really, you still don't get the option of putting the wide body on the car, like I said, and the hood and some of that other stuff that you do get on the Scat Pack, but you can set an RT up to be really, really nice as well. So I just want to kind of point that out. Now, something else that I've never touched on, and I feel like maybe it's pertinent for this particular video, is, you know, where did the term Scat Pack even come from? Because, in all honesty, it sounds just a little bit gross, but you know, where it really originated from was back when Sinatra and all his buddies, they had this thing, you know, they had the Rat Pack. A lot of folks out there are simply not really old enough to remember that, myself included, but that was a thing. And then of course there was a play on words, and Mopar managed to come up with this Scat Pack, and there were actually 4 different cars back in 1968 that were qualified to be in the Scat Pack, so to speak. It was like the Coronet, the Dart GTS, the Charger, and I think there was one other one. There's 4 different cars. And anyway, they had to run an amazing, astounding number of a 14-second quarter mile to be able to qualify to be in the Scat Pack. So anyway, a pretty neat little factoid for you out there. So it actually is not as gross as one might think. So where does that really leave us in terms of, you know, should they continue to call the Scat Pack an RT? What are my thoughts on it? Well, a couple of different things. I feel like the RT Scat Pack made perfect sense all the way up into, say, 2018, when they really blurred the lines and the SRT went away. And of course now we do have that big 6.4 in the RT Scat Pack. If you look at the stickers on these things, they don't say anything about SRT. They literally just still say RT. And of course we're talking about a much punchier car in the Scat Pack than we're talking about the 5.7 Hemi. And when somebody comes and tells me, look, Racer X, I have an RT Charger, I automatically assume that they're talking about the 5.7. I think most of you guys would agree with that. Somebody says, hey, look, I got an RT Challenger, that typically means that they're running the 5.7 car and not the 6.4. So this day and age, I kind of wish that they would just go out and they would say, look, a Scat Pack is a Scat Pack, take the RT distinction off of it. It wouldn't be that hard to do, and I feel like it would create a lot less confusion. And it's good to know the history of the Scat Pack and why it is what it is. but it's definitely worth pondering. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that the Scat Pack, or I realize a lot of people probably just don't care, and that's, you know, I might sort of fit into that category, but this is a question I get a lot. So do you guys think it should still be considered an RT when it is in fact a 6.4 Hemi under the hood and it's a Scat Pack? So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below, and I will catch you on the next one. So until then, Racer X.